when you're doing something with a nonprofit, you're not tied to one organization. Now, Carson has a heavy involvement in it, which I love, but we're able to bring in everyone and anyone that's in financial services to be a part of that, which ultimately is driving the industry to be better and teaching them how to be mentors. And that's so impressive, right? We have people coming in from insurance companies, we reverse mortgages, technology platforms. It's all of these mentors are going to have an opportunity to learn from this experience and then take it back to their firms.
Hello and welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Framework Podcast. I'm your host for today's episode, Jamie Hopkins. I'm not joined by my other host here, Anna, today. She is off, and we decided to keep this recording going anyway, so we'll be back next week with Anna, maybe running the whole show without me. But joined with two of my friends and colleagues in different areas of the world, Dr. Julie Ragatz and Kellan Brown. Excited to have you both on the show today. We're going to talk a little bit about FinServ Foundation, the nonprofit that all three of us are involved with, a little bit about mentorship, and then a little bit about Kellan's story. She's been a repeat guest on the show now. And Julie, I think you were probably like pushing up there maybe as you might now be like the next most amount of times outside Anna and I.
Well, I was all prepared for my food question too, so I'm sort of disappointed.
Yeah,
okay, I actually didn't have anything new. No, it's always fun to be here.
Yeah.
Well, wait, Julie, I don't know what your favorite food is.
Well, every time I try to like pick something different, but I will tell you. So here's my food story, Jamie, hijacking your conversation. As Jamie, and I think Kel, you also know, we recently got chickens. So I moved out to Omaha to move with Jamie, go big or go home in Omaha, Nebraska. So we bought a bunch of acreage outside of town and we have chickens. And I was watching them at night because that's what I do. They're so fun. And I had this realization that I can't eat meat anymore. And so I walked into the house and I told Mike, my husband, I said, I don't think I can eat meat anymore. And he looks at me like I'm crazy, which I felt in the moment. And so my food thing is I have stopped eating meat. And let me tell you, in Omaha, Nebraska, that is not an easy thing to do. Like I go out to restaurants, like good restaurants, and I'm like, I guess I'll have the salad. And they're like, are you okay with bacon bits? I'm like, no, I'm not okay with bacon bits. So that's been my food development, is that I have gone. As pescatarian, I eat fish. I'm not raising fish, so I don't really care about fish. But yeah, no more meat.
Wait, so it's like eggs? You just eat eggs from the chicken?
Yeah, but we have a lot of eggs now. We have like 56 eggs a week, so I'm totally cool with how they're produced by my chickens.
So I have this one a lot. Like you're okay eating the unborn children of the animals that you have now put in cages, but you won't eat them. Right.
First of all, they're not in cages. They free range on my 5 acreage. They just have to watch out for my dog, Midnight Sparkles.
Yeah.
Who has, unfortunately, one of them, R.I.P. Tiny Miracle, my chicken. But, you know, okay. Jamie, when you met me like 11 years ago, is this what you would have expected?
No.
How many chickens do you have, Julie?
We had 8. Now we have 7.
Okay. It's a lot of eggs.
It's a lot of eggs. Kellan, come out to Omaha. This is another reason for you to come visit us in Omaha. I will send you back with farm fresh eggs.
You gave me like a hard no on summer visits in Omaha. And then it was like, I came out in, I think it was January, and you guys were like, this is like the worst time to come to Omaha. And I'm like, okay, when is the right time to show up to
September.
Omaha?
Totally come in September. Really nice. End of September, actually. There's like a good 2-week period there. Yeah. At the end of September, beginning of October. That
after Excel, but before October.
It'll be Kellan week.
Oh, I would love that.
Well, Kellan, you have to answer too. This is always the challenge when Julie and I and you talk, that you never know where it's going to go. But give us real quick that one, and then I do just want to make sure I push the conversation for it, because Anna's going to be like, it's 5 minutes into this episode and you haven't even gotten to anything yet. But Kellan, favorite food, and then also if you want, just go right into like your first money memory too. I'd love to hear that.
Ooh. Okay. Well, if Anna was here, she would know. It's not the food, it's the experience. I love going out to dinner with people and like building that bond and relationship. If I'm all by myself, give me a good charcuterie board, cheese board. I'll be happy. Morning, afternoon, evening. It's probably where it is. So, all right, first money memory. So I have a number of these. I've shared a couple with you, Jamie, but I'm going to share one that I don't think I have told you yet. So I'm one of four. My youngest sibling is my brother. He was born with congenital heart defects. And what people don't know is when you're put on an organ donation list, most of that cost is elective. So my parents grew up with like a lot of strife around that, and we saw that. They tried to hide it, but you still felt it, right? So the memory of this is when we were at Boston Children's Hospital. Craig was on the donors list. He had not received the heart yet. But my sisters, the three of us, plus my mom and dad are just sitting there. And at the time, they didn't have cell phones. So my dad had to go check his voicemails for work on a landline. And he comes back and he's got this look on his face. And we're all just kind of staring at him. And my mom's like, Mark, what's going on? And he goes, Pam, the boat sank. And so I'm listening to this and looking around and nothing happens. And then all of a sudden, the two of them, my mom and my dad, break out in hysterical laughter. Like if you've seen The Money Pit, you know, when Tom Hanks is sitting there and like the tub falls through and like that's like that large belly laugh. That's what they were doing. And my sisters and I have no idea what's going on. And all of a sudden, my parents just look at us and they were like, look, it's just stuff. Like at the end of the day, you can always earn, you can always make more money, just work hard. But at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is what's sitting right here. And it's the family. And Jamie, I've said that to you before. Like I still to this day refer back to it's just money. Like just work hard. You can go make more. So that's probably one of the biggest impactful memories I have.
That's a nice memory. I like that story a lot. Yeah, I think it's got a lot of good lessons, and I do like your approach to, you know, how you talk about money is it's always just money. You can make more. And I think that's always a helpful lesson for people to take away from this. And yeah, it's you know, it can feel not that way in a lot of situations when something big is happening, right? And then sometimes it's so absurd that you can just kind of laugh because there's no other way to approach it at that moment, which I think is a little bit of that. So
yeah, and we still use that all the time. Like, oh, the boat sank. You know, like we go back to that comment in the family regularly, just because it was like such a pivotal moment. Like they felt so depleted. They've got one kid that's like basically on his deathbed, which by the way, Craig is totally fine. He's 38 years old now, married, happy in Austin, like successful heart transplant, 2 kidney transplants. Yeah, he's an amazing story. We could talk about that for hours, but yeah.
And it's a great story. And one of the other stories that you've shared with me before, and we did some webinars on this recently, I'm going to kind of shift to the next piece and get us into a little bit of the mentorship, which is, you know, I guess, Julie, I'll go to you second and I'll start with Kellan, but I do want to just get into this conversation about the importance of mentorship. And that's what I want to focus on here today, then how we've wrapped that into FinServ Foundation. So if you haven't checked out FinServ, go to the website, FinServFoundation.org, and we're helping bring really the next generation into the financial service profession through coaching, mentorship, exposure, conferences, education. And so we'd love for you to be part of it. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go here today. But Kellan, tell us a little bit of your story around mentorship, because that's shaped a lot of, you know, kind of how you've approached your career, how you've continued to develop, and why you work with so many young individuals coming into this, you know, not just this profession, but into their own professions.
Sure. I started in sports marketing. I was a Division I athlete, knew I wanted to be around sports for most of my life. So I was given an opportunity to work for a boutique firm. And it was my first job. I didn't really know what that relationship was going to be with like my boss. So it was somewhat combative, and I didn't realize it until my sister overheard me on a call with my boss at the time. And she asked me, is that how you guys communicate to each other? Is that how she treats you normally? And I said, yes. You know, is that wrong? And she was like, well, yeah, like that is not how someone should be treating an employee. So I really sat back and did some self-reflection on that. And I realized that the best lesson I can take away from this experience is this is what I don't want anyone that I ever worked with to feel like, right? This is a great opportunity for me to say, okay, I'm learning from this and I want to grow from it and make sure that no one else that's in my sphere, my circle, will ever feel this way as well. So then I had the privilege of working for a gentleman named Brett Musgrove. And he gave me the freedom to grow as a leader in ways that he couldn't even help me. And this is when I moved into the construction industry. I was there for 8.5 years. I started out in outside sales and moved all the way up to the vice president and their chief growth officer. And I loved it. Being a female in the construction industry is very interesting. So we built quite a program around how we can uplift people. And he gave me the tools to be able to do that. Put me through trainings, introduced me to other women in the industry. And then I figured out, well, let's figure out how to do this inside of Premco. So we built out a program within there so that all of our employees felt that fostered and that developed relationship. And so that's really how this whole mentorship thing started. If you fast forward to then my next role, that was at Finance of America, we decided to implement a program that actually gave a return on investment. And the reason why I wanted to do that was I wanted tangible results on a program that not many people were capable of measuring. And the reason why I wanted to do that is to show to the people that weren't really sure if this was something that should be a part of organizations, that it's worth it. And so that's really been my path. And now I share it with everyone I possibly can and show the value of it, and have some unbelievable mentors myself and mentees that I get to be a part of their life. And I'm super grateful for it.
Yeah. And well, thank you. And I'm super excited. When Julie and I were building out FinServ, we kind of circled you up as somebody we wanted to add for a couple different reasons. I mean, one, about your passion and just care factor, but also that you brought a lot on the mentorship side that we could kind of institutionalize and make it something scalable. And so, Julie, maybe talk a little bit about that too, just where FinServ Foundation is today, and kind of this past year launching the mentorship for the students, and just maybe a little update for people. I still think we've never even done a full episode on FinServ. It kind of gets sprinkled throughout, so people hear the name, but you came in as executive director at FinServ. Is it 2 years ago now, roughly speaking? Yeah,
2 years ago. Yeah. Well, thanks, Jamie. And I just want to call out, I love the chance to do podcasts like this, because you get to know people you like so much better. I don't think I actually knew that about you, Kellan. And every time I do these podcasts, I find out something new about Jamie, and I've known him for a lot of years. So I love your story, and that is such a cool thing for me to be able to hear. And it speaks so well to you and your character, that out of that experience of being treated in a way that didn't feel right, and kind of also out of the experience of having someone call that out to you and say, hey, this is not appropriate. You shouldn't feel like that. Nobody should speak with you like that. I think that gives you a tremendous amount of empathy for the fact that sometimes people don't know they're in situations in which they're not being treated well. And I think that's something that, as you grow up in the business and you just grow up as a person, that becomes very important to me too. Right, to call out this behavior is aberrant. You shouldn't be feeling like this after a conversation with anybody, let alone somebody you're professionally engaged with. So thank you for sharing all that, and thank you especially for what you've done out of that experience. So I came on board FinServ about 2 years ago. I still remember the conversation that Jamie and I had when I took over. I think it was something like, I kicked you the ball and I'm not coming back, which is how I knew he trusted me. To take an ownership and leadership role in something that's really important to him. So while it sounds facetious, I was glad he kicked me the ball, and I was glad he trusted me enough not to circle back too much. So we have really grown. It was funny. I was trying to pull together some statistics before this conversation, but found myself in 3 conversations with new FinServ fellows, and so I didn't. But we are close to we are touching on relationships with about 40 different colleges and universities from all across the country. We started with 20, we're close to 40, we're close to 200 kids at different stages in our program, from starting at 40. So we have really grown tremendously, and that's been such a privilege for me to be a part of. What I've been really excited about is this year, just having the opportunity to stand up a formal mentorship program with Kellan's support. So I think Jamie and I have a lot of interest in this. We had a lot of will, we had a lot of commitment and passion, but what neither one of us had was really what Kel brought to the table, which is like, this is the collateral you use. And I'm like, oh, that's really helpful. So I can tell you a little bit about how we're standing up our program. And that is that we call it a structured mentorship program. And that's because of a couple of reasons. The first is we're very purposeful about our mentors. We put them through, it's not a throwaway commitment for us. We ask them to make a 6-month commitment. We ask them to meet with their mentee at least once a month. We have at least 3 webinars to check in with them. And we're very purposeful about our mentees. So they also fill out a specific survey designed to elicit what they're looking for in a mentor. We go through their DISC profile, which we find really helpful to be able to let them know a little bit about themselves and their communication style. So they do their DISC. I debrief with them individually after that to say, hey, well, this is what this told us about you. And then we will share that with their mentor. And I also think that because we're getting them to set goals with the mentor relationship, in many ways, this is the first type of goal setting they've really done. It was interesting. I had a conversation with a young person on my team the other day who was really, really frustrated about a difficult experience she was having with a service provider. And I called her in my office and I said, so here's the thing. What do you want out of this situation? And she said, well, I want them to resolve my problem. I want them to fix this so I can do what I need to do. And I said, so can you tell me if the current course of action you're embarking on is going to get you what you want? And it was kind of sending, terse, cranky emails. She's like, no. I'm like, good. Right. So let's think about what's going to get you to what you want. And I think that just even helping kids have that conversation, right? What I want out of this relationship. I want to leave this relationship with a more solid understanding of the type of firm I want to look for, right? Well, then you've set a goal and you can kind of work towards that. So we're really excited about this. I also think in mentorship, like the term financial advisors, and I love bringing my philosophy language in when I can, it lacks a stable referent. And I've said this before. When I say mentor, what does that mean? And so for one aspect of what that means in FinServ is this structured program. But I was just talking to a young FinServ fellow a couple of minutes ago, and what I shared with her, sometimes what you don't need is a formal mentor relationship. Sometimes you just need a meaningful conversation. So I've definitely had kids who come through FinServ who say, gosh, I think I want to take my undergraduate curriculum in financial planning, but I think I want to be a estate planning attorney. Like, I think that's what I want to do. To which I'm like, well, you should talk to Jamie Hopkins. And he can lay out what that career path is. And maybe it's a one-off. Maybe it's 20 minutes out of Jamie's time. Maybe Jamie's able to direct him to a couple of different people. But that you can get what you need out of that conversation, right? And I think we can be purposeful about saying sometimes it's important to have that consistent interaction. But sometimes it's important just to have an intervention and say, hey, I'm interested in what it would be like. I get this one a lot to have a tax practice and merge that into a financial planning practice. And which one should I start with, right? Should I start with being a CPA or should I start with being a CFP? And I said, I don't know, but I got about 3 people you could talk to about that who've done it differently. And again, that doesn't need to be a formal relationship. So I think we've done a good job at FinServ with that kind of purposeful conversations. And I'm really excited we're going to bring in the other more formal element.
Yeah, I love that. And again, if you're an advisor that's listening, right, reach out to Julie or go to FinServFoundation.org and reach out. We're always looking for more mentors.
Yes.
Julie, how many schools are we working with right now? I know you keep adding schools, so
it's somewhere between 35 and 40. We've recently, and so we don't necessarily match based on geographic proximity, but we are mindful of that. So when we do have students that we can match in person, we do that, but most of it's done virtually. I would just add, if you have been successful in this business to any degree, you have something to share with somebody else.
Yes.
Right? Everybody has something to share. Everyone has some piece of wisdom they can pass on. You don't have to reach a certain age, a certain AUM, certain stature. Everyone has something that somebody else doesn't know. And so don't let that hold you back from contacting us and joining our program.
Julie, it was so nice to hear you
Kellan,
talk
I know
about
you also
structure.
like some of the numbers.
Yeah, I do love numbers.
It's exciting. I think we are getting to, It's also needed. When I talk to students, we do a lot in FinServ. What they always ping on is mentorship. They want a person who's not me, right? Who can help them figure out what's next.
Yeah. Well, Kellan, you also talk a lot about the numbers around this too when we've done webinars on it. So can you give us a couple of those ones that you like? Why is this good for companies to consider, adding mentorship programs? So if we have advisor firms or other firms listening, why should they consider mentorship just in their own business? And then also there's usually a lot of benefits to the mentor themselves. So can you just cover a little bit of those, Kellan?
Yeah. With the actual numbers, it's really more about think about the retention, right? If you talk to anyone in HR, how long it takes to actually onboard an employee and the cost of that, it's incredibly valuable to set those goals, as Julie said, but then also give them the opportunity to promote from within because they already know the systems. They're already set up. They're not taking the onboarding time and the people and all of that. So that's one way to measure the value of mentorship because you're actually seeing how quickly your mentees or mentors are actually getting promoted. There was a study done where it said for people that are a part of the program, I think mentors promoted 6 times more than mentors that were not in the program, and mentees 5 times more than people that were not in the program. So it just goes to show the value of that. And then the other one, so we had promotion, retention. Those were the biggest ones. I think our number out of FAR, that alone, we saved $2 million last year. Also, I think the headaches of just bringing in new people and the resources to search for that, HR was incredibly grateful for. So that's pretty valuable just on the numbers side. And then Jamie, what was the second half of your question?
Yeah, well, you got the part of it, but the benefit to mentors, right? So the first one's the numbers, and then, a lot of times, mentors actually get more out of it too, right? If you've been a mentor, you know that. But, when you're asking for people, hey, give back to this profession, it is usually very valuable to that person too.
Well, it's an unbelievable gift that you receive. You're seeing someone grow because you're helping be a part of that. I mean, I always preach about this book called The Go-Giver. I think, Jamie, you actually did a podcast with Bob Berg, the author of that. Bob Berg. And it talks a lot about, the ability to give, but also then the ability to receive. And you oftentimes don't accept that, but mentorship just automatically gives that to you because you're seeing the success in these people. And then you also learn an enormous amount from generations that you don't think you need to learn from. That's another piece of this is there's so much value being added. I think, Jamie, I reached out to you the other day because I had a FinServ fellow call and say, Kellan, do you have an idea of how to write a resume? And I started laughing. I'm like, man, this is their first opportunity to go in the workforce. And I'm not sure how you write a resume when you've never had a job before. I think Jamie, we've gone through that process together. And I sent her to Presley Fee, we're a big fan of, works for the University of Illinois. And she was able to plug that in, no problem. But that was such a beautiful opportunity for me to be able to say, okay, we need to do this for these students. But yeah, it is the most rewarding thing to see your mentee be successful and that you played just a very small role in that. And you don't even realize that it's a small role for you. For them, it's ultimately life-changing. Julie, getting back to my point on you talking about the structure, though, of mentorship, that's the other thing that I love seeing about this. Pushing programs like this so that other people can be able to talk about them is so valuable because it just continues to move throughout the industry. And you're giving people the content, the tools, the decks, the trainings, so that everyone is able to do this, whether it be within a firm, whether it be for a foundation like FinServ. And I think the other last piece of this is when you're doing something with a nonprofit, you're not tied to one organization. Now, Carson has a heavy involvement in it, which I love, but we're able to bring in everyone and anyone that's in financial services to be a part of that, which ultimately is driving the industry to be better and teaching them how to be mentors. And that's so impressive, right? We have people coming in from insurance companies, we reverse mortgages, technology platforms. It's all of these mentors are going to have an opportunity to learn from this experience and then take it back to their firms.
I think one of the things, just to piggyback on what Kellan said, that's so impactful as well, is that I'm consistently impressed with the generosity of spirit I see in people in this business. And I think that's because you really are passionate about this business. And frankly, you're, in my experience, more successful in this business if you're oriented with the spirit of service and help. And so these are advisors are people who like seeing an impact. And that's why they do what they do. And the best advisors are the ones who are there because they want to see an impact. And in some ways, it's such a blessing for Kel, you and I and Jamie to be involved in this space with an industry that in general is just like that, right? People who like helping other people and who are willing to pay it forward and who understand the importance of investing in the long term in people and in relationships. And so it's a neat thing because that's, you don't really... I don't know what your experience has been, but I haven't had to sell mentorship to people. Like, I feel like if I talk to an advisor and I explain the opportunity, they're like, oh, where do I sign up? Like, I don't think I've heard, I don't have time. I have heard maybe I don't have enough to share, or I don't have enough to give, or are you really looking for somebody in their first 10 years? But I haven't heard, wow, I'm really busy. I don't have time to help. And it's a privilege for us to be in that space because you're not making as much of a sales pitch as you would be, I think, in another industry about the importance of the next generation and the importance of helping.
And Julie, I'll add one thing I tend to add on this one, which is the, if you're somebody, and like, it's not age related either. Like, you can always ask for a mentor and they don't need to be like younger or older than you, right? Like you can have mentors, different genders, different ages. But the big thing is usually to ask. And I think so many people move through their life without thinking that they're allowed to ask for it. And so, you said you always learn something. Actually, neither one of you know this, but I actually asked somebody new if they would be a mentor for me today. I'm not telling you who it is, but, I did actually ask that today. It's a brand new thing. No.
Oh man, that's like so unfair.
It's we'll see. But no, I asked earlier today. I reached out to somebody and asked if they would.
And I'm sure they said yes.
I don't know. Could you imagine mentoring Jamie? This is like when he said to me, he was like, I have my own financial planner. And I'm like, oh God, I feel so bad for that advisor because I could not imagine actually managing Jamie as a human being and then his finances. Like, that's trouble.
One of the things I'm really glad our program does is it does match people, but it is interesting. I had a conversation with one of the folks on my team and I shared with him his story and he's in a great coachable space. And I said, so I've had a couple mentors in my career, people I've considered mentors. And I said, and there's one through line, there's one thing that they all have in common. I said, and that is that they don't I don't even know how to describe it. They have control over their emotions. They can sit in a really dumb meeting and not have a look on their face like, I'm so bored right now. You could tell them bad news. You could even be insulting to them. And it's like you could stick a penknife in their leg and their face won't change. Just total mastery. And I remember one of my mentors, we were in a call with an issue. It was a former role. And he said, Julie, I want to let you know that I'm going to get really angry in this phone call we're going to have. He's like, I want to prepare you for the fact I'm going to get angry. And his anger was a tool. Like it was a tool designed to achieve an end where my anger just like all pops up all cattywampus and now I'm angry. And I said, I was telling this young person, I said, I want what they have. I want that ability to talk myself down, to be angry strategically instead of reactively. I want that ability to not be impatient with other people and to listen to everything they have to say. And throughout my career, I have found three, and they've been men who've done that. One was, I don't know how you describe Jim Mitchell, Jamie, like a super boomer. Like he's probably 80 now. And he was an executive leader, exactly what you'd expect. But he was my mentor for 12 years. The other one was a black man who's probably 4 or 5 years older than me, but he had that thing, emotional control. And you know what, frankly, the other one is Jamie. You sit through a lot of really dumb meetings changing your face, and you're controlled that way. And it's something that I admire. It's something I've gotten better at. It's something where it's the ability to look at a situation, interpret up, not be reactive, and be planful about your response. It's a wonderful characteristic to have. People who don't have it get sunk. And it's something that I've looked for. So I think what I was telling this young person, I said, find somebody who has something you want. Try to articulate what that thing is, and then ask for specific advice about that thing. How do you do that, Ron? How do you do that, Jamie? How do you do that, Jim? I want to do that thing. I want to be like you. And I think that helps people who are looking for mentors identify what they want out of the relationship, and then tells Jamie, okay, Julie wants to learn this. Well, I can help with that, right? Like I can tell her how to do this, and so everyone feels empowered because we can meet that goal together.
I love that. And, Kellan, I'm going to ask you for maybe a tip or something that comes to your mind when I go through this. But, the emotion stuff is really interesting, Julie, because the more time you spend with, let's say, really good executive leaders, you do realize that they're able to use their emotional responses, as you said, they use it strategically and as tools to elicit whether feelings or outcomes. Versus, the people who aren't great leaders out there that usually just let their emotions explode and it's not controlled, right? There are, great leaders have the same emotions too, but they're not letting them overcome meetings and drive the direction because they're upset or don't like something. And
or even below the surface and being passive aggressive about it, right? They're not reacting, whether overtly or covertly, to whatever's happening around them.
Yeah. But I'll use so this was not from a mentor, but a friend of mine who's a partner at Carson, and I had to deliver tough news. I was mad at somebody, and I just happened to be talking to her that day and was like, I'm really mad at somebody, and I think I'm going to call them and yell at them, and and I don't really yell at people, but my version of that, and it was but she gave a really good perspective that her mentor, this was advice to her, was well, how do you do that in a way that it makes the person feel good when they come out of the meeting, though? Because just yelling at somebody is more about you. It's not about them. It's not getting you to where you want them to be. But how do you actually provide the feedback and tell them that you're disappointed, but then also make them feel good when they receive that it is positive? And it did totally change. I mean, it was my next call, and I was all upset and was just gonna go off on somebody because I was super disappointed in them, right? And just the way that they had performed and behaved. And I ended up taking a very different approach, and it went really well. And that was, to me, one of those nice situations in which it wasn't necessarily my mentor, but the mentorship to somebody else impacted me positively in that situation. And, I do think then when you deliver tough conversations, and Julie, we do this a lot with young people coming in, is you have to deliver some tough learnings sometimes but you try to do that in a way that you make the person feel empowered, not disempowered by that news. But Kellan, how about you? You've led I'll kind of shift this into two parts, right? You've led a lot of teams, and now you're actually going out into a new company too. And right, so you've joined a new company as the time that this has come out, which is super exciting. But tell us a little bit, what are some lessons that maybe you've taken from leadership out there that you also put in with your teams?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm moving over to Income Lab. I am their Chief Growth Officer and very excited to be a part of that team. So Johnny Polson, Justin Fitzpatrick are our founders. Keep an eye out for us. It's going to be fun. We're into retirement income planning software, so that'll be good. Some tips, though. Yeah, leading the teams, I always say lead with questions. I think it's very valuable to figure out a way to communicate by understanding what's really going on. So, Jamie, to whoever gave you that feedback and the approach that you took, um, I'm so grateful they did, because it probably shifted your day. You don't feel good coming out of, you know, Jamie doesn't really yell, but the way you yell would be, you wouldn't feel good about it either. But understanding where they're coming from and being able to share an experience that is relatable, I think that makes people be set at ease, because we're all not perfect. And I think that's the most important thing, is finding that relatability and that common ground and that security. Jamie, I actually just read your article on trust and how important that is. If you find that foundation of trust with any employee or any mentee, everything changes. So keeping that foundation is incredibly valuable. I also read some work on a study on, like, once you get to that red level of anger, it's really hard to come out of it. So removing yourself from any situation and just like taking a minute to go for a walk, or finding that deep breath, as cheesy as that sounds from a yoga instructor, it actually does change your makeup chemical mindset. And then you can go in with more of a strategic approach of, like, what are you trying to achieve here? So I think those are just like some small little pieces. And then, Jamie, just to go back to your example, ask for support. Like, what do you recommend here? I'm really disappointed in this person. You're going to get some good feedback from people. I really want to know who you asked to be your mentor.
That's all you got out of this. Well, it's just a mystery for everyone now.
But, I think
what's interesting about that story is that I think that, and maybe Jamie, maybe you didn't know that was something I admired about you. Maybe you didn't. It's interesting that you just told an anecdote about and a story about yourself in which you struggled for that kind of emotional mastery in a situation. And yet I see you as someone who doesn't do that. I see you, because when you lead me, you're usually the one who's saying, okay, let's like take a different perspective, even if you're probably right and the other perspective isn't, like, what happens? And I'm like, okay, we can play that like world game here, but you talk me down from that, right? Yet I see you as someone who always does that, right? And you see yourself as someone who's consistently trying to be better in that space and recognizes when you're not. And I actually think there's a lesson there. And I see that lesson more because I lead such young people, and I've led older people too. And I've led younger people, and they see me as someone who has it all together, right? They see me as someone who's not easily provoked, as someone who's kind of consistently ready to help, as someone who's very emotionally steady and even. And yet I would say that I still need to grow in that. So it's always being open as well to other people. The way I think a gift of mentorship, we talked about how is it for the mentor, it expands your self-concept, right? Like now Jamie might think of himself slightly differently because he heard me share that, right? Mentees see us differently than we see ourselves. They differently see us differently than our peers see us. They see us differently than our leaders see us. And for me, that's been really rewarding. And it's also been rewarding for me to tell people what I see about them that I want, right? Like I could tell all sorts of things that I love about Kellan. Her kindness, her generosity of spirit, her willingness to help, her willingness to share her expertise. I wish I was more like that. And it creates a sense, I think, where we all get to know ourselves better. And that's a real beauty and a gift of being a mentor and allowing other people to interact with you that way too.
And Julie, to that point, it also makes you want to do it again, right? Yeah. Like I always say to people, whenever we start these talks, I'm like, take a moment and really think about someone that's made an impact in your life, in your career, personal, professional, whatever that is. Someone usually pops into your mind, right? Well, think about that story and write them a thank you letter. Yeah. When you receive that thank you note or that text message or that email, oh my gosh, it's so like, wow, did I really make that big of an impact on you? And it makes you want to go do it again for somebody else, right? That whole concept of paying it forward and, seeing that growth and then receiving that thank you it's it's so rewarding.
Agree. Completely agree. So contact me and be a mentor.
Yeah.
So if that wasn't compelling sell from like the three of us about why you should help at FinServ, like I got nothing. Like I'm out.
Yeah. Well, I just want to be respectful of everyone's time. We're trying to keep these in somewhat order, but this is fantastic. I think this was wonderful conversation about the power of mentorship and just some real life conversations around it. And Kellan, we're super excited for you to go lead over there at Income Labs and, really amazing retirement income software. And if you haven't checked that out, I'd definitely go out and I think it's incomelaboratory.com and sign up for a demo there. I joined the advisory board there too. So I'm a super big fan of it and talk about how impressive I think the software and the company is. And so it's great leadership. We're super excited for you over there and super excited to work with all these FinServ fellows out there in the world from all these different universities coming into our profession. And, we need mentors. You can also sponsor these students getting their different designations and licenses through scholarships. So if you haven't donated or you want to help people come into this profession, that's another thing you can do. Last question, Kellan, just for you. And I know you've answered this before on the show, but I'll have you answer this one and we'll close it out, which is we try to close out with that the Find Your Freedom message and what does freedom mean to you?
Oh, this is such a loaded question. Mine's difficult. It really is. It's really about the kids. Knowing that your children are protective and have the resilience to come out of really challenging situations, that's not something you can control. But knowing that I gave them the tools to be able to do it, that's my freedom. Knowing that we've built strong enough kids to weather what can be very challenging lives, that's my freedom.
That's great.
I love that. And Julie, yours is clearly building resilient chickens that can outrun midnight sparkles. So
we all promote freedom in our own ways. Some of us on a prairie, some of us, not on a prairie. We work within our circumstances.
Well, Julie, Kellan, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for all the impact you're having at FinServ. And Julie, thanks for everything you're leading up with the Next Gen program at Carson, among other things. Kellan, for your mentorship and leading over there at Income Labs too. I appreciate you both. You've been great friends of mine for a long time. And thanks for joining the Framework Podcast today. And everybody else, thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode.